Hey guys, Nick here. Welcome to my spoiler review for the new film X-Men Apocalypse. And like I said, that there will be spoilers in this video, so I'm gonna be spoiler heavy. No holding back in this review. And obviously, if you guys watched my spoiler-free review, I'm gonna be saying a lot of the same things. So, again, my thoughts on X-Men Apocalypse, obviously spoiler-filled. I loved this movie, and this was a movie that, for some reason, I wasn't really hyped for it when it was announced. Or maybe when it was announced, I was excited for it, but as the trailers came out, as pictures came out, for whatever reason, I just wasn't hyped for it. Maybe because the X-Men franchise is the longest running superhero franchise that there is out right now. And with this year being so stacked as it is, we had Deadpool, Batman vs Superman, Captain America Civil War. That's 3 superhero movies before this one even came out. So when I finally got time for this movie coming out, I'm like, I'll see it, but because I heard mixed things about this movie going in. So I wasn't going in with the highest of expectations, but in a way I'm kind of glad that I did, because it allowed me to enjoy the movie even more, because my expectations weren't low. They were just really lukewarm expectations, and I was really pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed this movie because of the way it tied into all the other X-Men movies while building on what it's been building on ever since X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past. And now that we are in this new timeline established after the events of X-Men Days of Future Past, and honestly, this movie, the more I think about it, the more I like it. I mean, in my spoiler-free review, I gave it an 8 out of 10 because there are problems with this movie. Obviously, it's not perfect. The biggest things that stand to me as the biggest problems in the movie were Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique, because I feel like while I don't think her performance was as awful as I thought it was going to be, she's really you can tell in the movie she's really checking out, and that she's really not caring about her role in the movie anymore, and that she's really just there just because she's contractually obligated to be there. Because I feel like when I see her on screen, I don't see Mystique anymore. Especially when 75% of the movie, she's just Jennifer Lawrence. She's not even Mystique. She only had the blue makeup on for maybe in total 5 to 10 minutes of screen time. And we're talking about Mystique, one of the most badass female X-Men characters. And these movies have really diluted her as a character, because in the original movies, she was so mysterious and badass and just all the things you would want Mystique to be. And Jennifer Lawrence, there were aspects of that in X-Men Days of Future Past, but in this movie, completely gone, because while Mystique is a morally ambiguous kind of character where she can really go either way, on the good side or the bad side, when she was more devious and more on the side of Magneto in the original movies, I found her a lot more interesting. With Jennifer Lawrence, they really try to humanize her, and because she's played by Jennifer Lawrence, there were studios really trying to push her as a leading star in these movies. Not so much in this movie, but in the previous 2, she played more of a pivotal role, and she hasn't really felt like Mystique for the most part. And in this movie, she really doesn't feel like Mystique. Again, was she as bad as I thought she was going to be? No. But by the end of the movie, she does come into her own as Mystique, the character, not Jennifer Lawrence. But I just feel like that's the one character they've really mishandled in these movies, excluding the X-Men Last Stand, which I know was the worst movie in the series of movies. It's funny because they make that jab in the movie, because when they have Cyclops, Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, and Jubilee all coming out of the mall after seeing Return of the Jedi, they made a joke about the third movie being the worst, and of course they're taking a stab at X-Men The Last Stand, which I thought was pretty funny and pretty meta. Another thing I thought was kind of funny about this movie, because if you guys have seen Deadpool, in that movie, because it does take place in this X-Men universe, they make a jab at the X-Men movies, with Negasonic Teenage Warhead saying, just making a comment about the X-Mansion being blown up every few years. And in this movie, the X-Mansion does blow up and they rebuild it. So I thought, I don't know if that was intentional, but I thought it was kind of funny because the X-Men, they blow it up and they just rebuild it again. I actually thought that was kind of funny, but yeah, just some of the things that I loved about this movie were, again, like I said, the 2 characters that really stood out for me were Quicksilver and Jean Grey. Quicksilver, I'm so happy he had such a more pivotal role in this movie, because Evan Peters, he's such a likable guy, and the way he's portrayed Quicksilver, just so quick, obviously no pun intended, so quick-witted and so funny and sarcastic. It's the way he has the character. And in this movie, you see you see Peter Maxwell, because they don't want to call him Pietro, because that was the Marvel Cinematic Universe version, because of the whole rights thing with him and Scarlet Witch, whatever. But to get back to my point, is that they've really humanized him as a character. They made him more, not flawed, just more of a character in this movie. He wasn't just like, oh, Quicksilver, he's here for a cool scene and then he leaves. Like, in this movie, you do see him struggle with, does he want to tell Magneto that he's a son? And I thought that was a really cool plot line. That at the end, I really thought it was a cop-out by the way they handled it. But overall, I really loved his performance in this movie. And of course, that scene when he's rescuing everyone from the X-Mansion, except for Havoc, of course. And Havoc is a character that, like, he hasn't been, like, obviously the more pivotal character or main character, really. He's been cool. I mean, he had a bit in the last movie, first scene. Obviously, he played a bigger role in X-Men First Class. In this movie, we do find out that he is Scott Summers' older brother. It's weird how they try to explain that, because that means that, okay, Cyclops is like 18, so his parents had Scott when they were like 40-ish. I don't know. It just, the thing about timeline in this movie is, yeah, it's just, that's a lot to think about. But, and when Havoc died and seeing Scott Summers' reaction to it, I thought that was a really powerful moment. Even because it showed that, you can't save everyone. And I do like in these movies that there are stakes. Like, these actions do have consequences. And it was really Havoc that caused the explosion, unintentionally, of course, because his beam from his chest or whatever ignited one of the jets, or one of the engines in the X-Jet, which blew up the house. And obviously, with that whole rescue scene, that was like even a step up more than the Quicksilver scene in X-Men: Days of Future Past, because the way he pulls out people and dogs, and like this guy who's about to kiss this girl all awkwardly, the way that scene was handled was really well done, and definitely a step up from the scene in the last movie. And it was one of my favorite scenes in most of the X-Men movies. So there was that. Jean Grey was really a standout to me. Sophie Turner, I was really nervous about her performance because the trailers didn't really show off a good side of her performance, because in the trailers she seemed really wooden, and I haven't seen her on Game of Thrones, so I can't comment on her as an actress, because this is the first thing I've seen her in as an actress. And honestly, I was blown away by her performance, and it makes me want to see her as Jean Grey again. Like, this movie, like, the way it ends, I want to see the next chapter, and that's how well done I think this movie is, in my personal opinion. And her subtle, like, the slow build of her relationship with Scott Summers and how it started out compared to how it ended up at the end of the movie, it wasn't a forced romance. There wasn't even really any romance. There was just, you can see, like, there are touches of it here and there. But Jean Grey, she really came into her own, and she's really such a strong character in this movie, considering her relationship with Professor X and the way they actually use her Phoenix powers in this movie. Something I feel like was really terribly done in, the Dark Phoenix thing they tried doing in X-Men 3. But, and even another thing I want to mention was the whole, with the Wolverine scene, when them going to Alkali Lake, and, when they're in the Weapon X facility, and, they break Wolverine out, and she has that moment with Logan, and she gives him his name as a memory, and they're obviously because of Jean Grey and Logan's complicated relationship in the past movies, they obviously, like, that moment for them was almost like a tease for us fans who know where that relationship could potentially go. It is a new timeline, so what happened in those movies most likely isn't gonna happen, but it's a new timeline, so maybe they could, maybe they won't. There's a nice nod to that kind of complicated relationship that has been portrayed in the past. Let's see what else. Magneto, he's really been the one standout character, I think, in all these movies, because other than X-Men: The Last Stand, he's been one of the most consistent characters as far as character goes, because he's not just a villain. There's so much more to him. He's so layered, and there's so much pain in his life, because he was a Jewish person living during World War II who had to go to the concentration camps and dealt with everything that was going on with the Nazis and everything. So of course he hates humans. Like, you don't blame him for hating them. And in this movie, and he suffers so much more loss when his wife and child are killed right in front of him, and that sends him on a murderous, not like a murderous rage, but the way he uses like the necklace to kill all the soldiers like so quick. It's just Magneto. He's such a complex and emotionally deep character, and his relationship with Professor X has been one of the best things about these movies, about all of them, because it's so complex. Because they do have a friendship while they are adversaries. They respect each other, and that's the thing that makes him such an interesting character. Because again, he's not just a one-note villain. He's not just like a typical Marvel Cinematic Universe villain where he's just being a bad guy to be a bad guy. There's so much more to him. He sees himself not as a hero, but he sees him as someone who's just trying to do the right thing. But in this movie, I never understood why he really teamed up with Apocalypse. I understood he was angry because he just lost his family. But I would have liked more explanation for why the Four Horsemen really sided with Apocalypse, because I feel like that wasn't explained well in the movie, and that was a negative for me. But let's see who else was a standout. Nightcrawler was a standout. Seeing a younger version of Nightcrawler, because they do make a nod to the Nightcrawler that was in X2. It's the way he was quick-witted and he was the comic relief. This movie is a lot lighter in tone than that X-Men 2 movie was. And I think ultimately he worked out because there's so many characters in this movie. This movie worked for me personally, but it could have not worked so well for a lot of people because there's so many characters and so much going on. But I feel like the story flowed pretty well. People have problems with the final act. I personally don't. There are certain aspects of that final act that I don't like, but as a whole, I was really satisfied as a fan. And Nightcrawler, I thought was a really well done character because he was used as comic relief, but he wasn't just comic relief. He was an interesting character. He was cool. He was funny, and I really wanted to know in this continuity, is he Mystique's son? Because in the comics, I believe his parents are, this is Mystique and I think Azazel, but Azazel was killed in this timeline. So what does that mean for his parentage? Are they going to bring it up at all? They don't have to, but as a fan of the X-Men, I would like to have seen them address that. And they probably won't. They might, but we'll see how that goes. Let's see what else. Storm was a character in this movie that I thought was going to be used a lot more. Because she was, even though she was on Apocalypse's side, I never felt like she was like a villain or an adversary. Yes, she was fighting against the X-Men for a while, but you feel like she was really just a girl just trying to find her way through the world. And while she didn't have as much characterization as much as I would have wanted her to, Alexandra Shipp, I thought, did a really well done job with her performance. And it's nice seeing Storm have her accent back, because that's the one thing about Halle Berry's performance, that she started out with the accent in the first movie, was kind of there in the second movie, completely gone by the third movie in X-Men Days of Future Past. So it was nice to go back to her origin, her being in Egypt, having that accent, because Storm she wasn't born and raised in America. There's no reason for her to have an American accent. So I'm glad they fixed that. See what else? Cyclops I thought was really well done. I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but Cyclops I liked more in this movie than I have ever liked him in any of the other X-Men movies, because he was so misused, and he was really just the jealous boyfriend in those movies, and it really made me so mad and frustrated by the way that he was handled. But in this movie, there was more to him. He's young, he's not reckless, and he's just trying to figure out what's going on because he just discovered these powers, and he's discovering the inner hero within himself and the future potential leader of the X-Men. And in this movie, he was done way better than he ever has been. And again, the actor's name was Ty Sheridan, I believe. I think so. I could be wrong. Let's see, who else? Professor X, as always, is great. Him finally losing his hair to Apocalypse. And Apocalypse, I need to bring this up because I'm already almost 15 minutes into this. Apocalypse was visually, he was cool. He didn't look like the whole Ivan Ooze thing that people were worried about when those pictures came out last year. But there are a lot of aspects about him that I liked. I don't like villains being villains for the sake of being villains. And in this movie, Apocalypse kind of felt like that. He was just destroying the world for the sake of destroying the world. And I feel like I don't like villains that are just... He was kind of a one-note villain because, yes, he sees himself as a god. He sees the mutants as his children. But it's just... I want a better explanation for why he feels need to cleanse the earth. He thinks humanity has run the earth to shit, which it has, but I feel like there wasn't enough explanation as to why he was making those certain decisions. So that was just me personally. Again, he was really cool. I really wish they would have done some more with his powers, but there were some really dark scenes with him, especially when he was like would kill the people by like putting them like into the ground and like have them like half sticking out. Like there were some really dark and intense moments with him as Apocalypse, but I feel like as a fan I would have wanted more from him as a villain, and that was one of the things I was worried about. And it was kind of, yeah, it was a little noticeable, but he wasn't a terrible villain. I just feel like after these next couple of X-Men movies that are going to come out, I'm going to kind of forget about Apocalypse. So, there was that. What else? Obviously, I feel like now it's spoiler review. The Wolverine scene, when they're going to Alkali Lake and Wolverine goes full Berserker status, that was such an intense scene because because this is the PG-13 movie. I wasn't expecting that kind of intensity and that much gore and violence in a PG-13 movie, especially with Wolverine. But that scene, when he comes out, when he has all the Weapon X thing on him, and he just slicing through guys left and right. That was so... I was in shock. It was awesome to see finally go Berserker, but I was just like, holy crap, because I was in shock because I wasn't expecting that intense of a scene. And I knew he was going to be in this movie, obviously, because that last trailer kind of ruined it, but it's X-Men. If Wolverine wasn't going to be in it, a lot of people were going to be mad, because Hugh Jackman supposedly only has one more Wolverine movie left in him, so, it's going to suck to see him go. I understand why. He can only play the character for so long. He's been playing it for over 15 years, but, you know, I've loved his portrayal of this character, even though he hasn't been a main character. He wasn't a main character in this or in First Class. He's had the solo movies, just they were successful financially, but you know the first X-Men Origins people didn't like so much. I didn't hate it. It does have a lot of problems, but yeah. Back to X-Men Apocalypse. Let's see what else. The final battle. I feel like the last act of this movie was pretty good for the most part. I really like the action in this movie. And the fight scenes were all really well done, in my opinion. Seeing everyone use their powers, especially Quicksilver, because like punching Apocalypse, and Apocalypse eventually is able to track his movement and knock him down. I thought that was really well done. Beast in this movie, of course, Beast looks awesome because I've always liked Nicholas Hoult as Beast, because I feel like Beast is a character I would have wanted to have seen in the original, in the first two movies, and Beast was the one character in Last Stand who was played by Kelsey Grammer, who played Beast in X-Men 3, was the one standout thing in that movie that was obviously better than anything else in that movie. And Beast has been the one character in these movies that, he can be considered like a little wimpy sometimes, not making the best decisions. But when he was full on Beast mode, I think he's really cool. And by the end of the movie, when we finally see all the X-Men together in their comic book accurate suits, with Beast and Mystique finally like accepting who they are and letting themselves be their true mutant self. And that whole scene, just seeing everyone in the comic book suits, finally getting rid of the black leather suits from the first couple movies, which I didn't hate as much as everyone else did, but it's nice seeing something comic book accurate, especially with something with more color that, it is a little cheesy, but I liked how it turned out. Let's see, what else? Opening scene in Egypt was great, and I liked where Magneto ended up by the end of this movie. I wish they would have explained how... or why he really teamed up with Apocalypse, but I do like his turn because, again, he is a really layered character, and I would have wanted to have seen him be more of a villain, but more reasoning for why he was a villain in this movie. And where he is by the end of this movie, I was really satisfied. I wish that they addressed the whole, Quicksilver being his son thing, because, again, there was a cop-out by Quicksilver saying, oh, I'm just here for my family, too, without mentioning the fact that he's Magneto's son. But I liked him helping rebuild the X-Mansion and being there for Charles when he needed him, and him ultimately going his separate ways from Charles. I thought their relationship has been the one of the many things I think that these movies have really done really well. I really like their dichotomy and their complicated relationship as adversaries and as friends. I think that's one of the more interesting relationships in any of the comic book movies that have come out recently. So, there's that. Let's see, what else? I'm just going through the things that I had written down here. I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, I've already been rambling for 20 minutes. So X-Men Apocalypse, I think it's definitely worth a watch. For me personally, I liked it a lot. Not quite as good as Days of Future Past. There are things in this movie that I liked more than Days of Future Past or the X-Men First Class. Like, this movie felt like the most comic book-y out of the three. But, you know, it does have its flaws. It's not perfect. But I personally love this movie from start to finish. I'm really looking forward to the next one. Especially by the way this one ended. Obviously, everything ended in a nice bow. You know, no one really important died. I like how certain Psylocke, that was an open ending for her to come back because she really wasn't utilized as much as I would have wanted her to. She was just like a thug, pretty much. But yeah, that's gonna be it from me. So if you guys like what you see here, go ahead and hit subscribe below. I do review a bunch of other shows, movies on my channel. I put up content all the time. If you guys want to check my channel out, give this video a thumbs up. What did you guys think of X-Men Apocalypse? Did you guys have problems with it? Did you guys like it? What were your standout characters in this movie? What else did you guys not like about this movie? Let me know in the comment section below. So that's going to be it for me. So until next time, guys, have a good one.